Okay, so buddy, in a world where code is free, what's a software developer to do?
Well, so I mean, I think what the software developer should have always been doing, which is actually trying to figure out problems in the world and like and articulate how they might be solved, right? I think a lot of what software developers spend their time doing right now is figuring out if I do come up with a solution, like, is it something that I can hand off to somebody else? Is it something that I can scale? Is it something that I can understand when I look at it later when I've forgotten? All of those are like the trouble with code. Those are the problems with code right now as something that a business might want to manage. If code suddenly becomes free and self maintaining and self improving to a certain degree,
Right, right, right.
then then the whole task becomes, how do I see this thing in the world and how do I articulate how I might want to see it improved?
How do I articulate this thing and how do I articulate how I want it to improve? So that's how you want it to improve is like bug reports.
Yeah, I mean it might be. Like the other thing is I think there's some usefulness to just modeling still, right? Like I think that's going to be a thing that like is a good place for human novelty, right? Is to look at things in different ways and to model them in different ways.
So
And
you're saying that if code is free, I'm going to assume free means instant. It's not like free, but it'll take 10 years. It's to say that as soon as you have a model, then you immediately have an implementation.
yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So modeling seems to be the hard thing, but it always was. And the issue is that because we couldn't solve the modeling because it was hard, whilst we toiled at the code, we thought about the model in tiny little bits and we actually improved the model whilst we were enslaved. And now we're being asked to improve the model without the toil, and it doesn't feel as easy as it might sort of the fantasy might
I
seem.
think what, yeah, I think what's been uncovered is how much time people spent doing like silly things to avoid thinking about the model.
Yep.
Like I think that that's the thing that I'm starting to see more and more is how many tasks are ultimately incidental complexity. There are things that like are not actually thinking about the domain. They're thinking about how you approached solving for the domain in the past.
And I would
You
I would argue that a good developer, of which there aren't that many, I don't think, is one who concerns themselves with the model first, or the model. They put the model first.
one of the things that's been the biggest surprise to me after working with you, Tom, is I try really hard. Like I try more hard now to not write code than to write code, because I actually think that I've solved more problems for more companies by being able to get everyone mentally on the same page through
Mm-hmm.
communication than
Mm-hmm.
I ever managed to solve through writing the right line of code.
Well,
You
that's
know,
good. That's good. So how does that process get not only automated but taken down from the ivory tower and put in the hands of everyday people?
that's where I said social network the last time we talked, right? Because I think
Yeah.
like there's environments out there on the internet now where people are already, ideas and like communication has already been kind of commodified to a certain degree, and like people find it valuable for whatever reason, whether they're getting paid on a social network or whether they just like want to be content creators. They're out there pushing ideas out in front of everybody, right?
Right.
What I think is the failing of those systems is that there's nothing picking up those ideas and saying these ones are related, this one's actually a solution to that one. Like, you know you, these two people, if they met and talked, would like actually have, they would develop they would be better each individually for having talked to each other because they'd have a more complete picture of the
Right.
full
And,
model that
and
they're working with.
therefore, if you thought of the knowledge commons as an entity, the knowledge
Yeah,
commons would be better if they met.
yeah, and not only that, like they would also be able to present further refinements of the same ideas that they're presenting into into the pool of knowledge
So what
because
you're
of.
saying, another way of putting what you're saying is that in the knowledge realm, or in the
Mhm,
idea, in the realm of frontier ideas,
mhm.
deduplication is the same as accepting a friend request.
No, I think there's levels, right? Like I think there's a way that you can deal with other people's contributions that's a little bit more hands off and not like conversational, right? And that's kind of maybe a more scientific approach where it's like I don't.
No, no. I was meaning like if I'm in the knowledge plane and you're in the knowledge plane, and the machines detect a duplication between our ideas, then
Yeah,
that would imply that we are friends. So the deduplication occurs, but the signal that we receive is, "Hey, this guy's your friend."
sure. I like that way of framing it a little bit better. Not necessarily a request that I need to accept, but
No,
just
it's
like a.
not. It's like you were made friends by your agent, and your agent was like, "Talk to this guy." I
Yeah,
deduplicated these ideas from you both. That means that you're in sync. Make
yeah,
more, make more.
right, exactly. I think that's that's the virtuous thing that you can put on top of social media, in my opinion, which is like the a lot of things that happen on social media right now are like I don't really give a shit why they happen. Like it's washing over me like dumb entertainment, right? Like I'm not engaged with it at all, and that's because there's nothing helping to create more engaging experiences.
Right. But if you say that the model is the hard thing now,
Mhm.
and the
Yeah.
model is the value, in fact, it's the only value if the code is free, then social media doesn't feel like a thing that is conducive for work. Like the model making sounds like work.
Well, do you want to invent work again? Do you like I think that the ideal system, the one that everybody comes to and creates a great amount of value for humanity,
Right.
is one that is like more of a has more of a feeling of play, right? Like it's rewarding. It is its own end, right? It's rewarding in and of itself. It's
Okay.
like
Okay.
it pulls you in because you enjoy doing it, and like that's another part of the social media answer that I gave you too, right? It's like there's a lot of people that are there because I just need to be entertained. I need to fill my time with something, right? And like imagine being offered the choice between filling your time with like dumb entertainment that's pointless or filling your time with like contributing to a community that's actually trying to like build or understand or fix something. Maybe I'm a freak, but I think the latter sounds way more interesting to me.
Okay. So what are the features of the social network? What are the first features? Like, at what point does it achieve some kind of virality?
Yeah. So I mean that's farther than I've got in my own thinking about it a little bit, but it's what I think is people openly contribute to like social type applications because they want other people to see it, right?
Yes,
Um,
they want
a lot of
connection.
time,
They want connection with other people, and they're not getting it from the immediate peers, so they go looking for it from strangers who are presenting a facade.
and the reason those facades end up in there is because this is the open, unsolved question of social media, right? It's like, how do I populate my feed? Do I do it algorithmically? Like, when I'm seeing content that other people make,
Yeah,
like who's deciding what that content is? Is it just strictly chronological based on follows? Like that works well if you're interested in not getting like inserted into a filter bubble somewhere, but it also is hard to maintain, hard to build. So that's where the algorithmic feed idea came from, which is
all right,
some program somewhere is deciding what's important for me to see.
right.
Now, like,
Yeah,
what if that program was like instead of deciding what's going to make TikTok the most money,
yeah.
it was deciding what is going to make the world the best place.
Okay. So, what is the incentive of the social network to do that? Like the machine that runs it, why would it? How could it be incentivized to want that?
I think, and like, please correct me. I imagine you've probably thought about this a lot more than me, and you have better ideas than me about it. But I think there's probably a way of measuring novelty and trying to maximize novelty. Like trying to create.
Right, but you could end up with like unlimited versions of hentai. Like that's novelty.
Float somewhat boat, right? I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. That something else occurred to me when I was thinking about this too is if you look at LLMs as like the averaging machine, if you look at them as being much better at making text predictions from a corpus that's more common than from a corpus that's less common, right? If you the things that people talk about more are going to inform how the LLM thinks more, right?
So it's not what they say; it's how often they say it.
There's a component of that, right? Because it is statistical. I actually think that LLMs have a built-in ability to understand what is a frontier, right? Because the things like when you ask an LLM something and it comes up with two wildly divergent answers in two separate runs,
Yeah.
that's probably a thing that just hasn't been talked about a lot, right? Like there's not a lot of data to inform that output.
So the instability of the LLM's response with different seed parameters is an indication of the novelty of the topic, right?
Right.
If you
It has a
center, it's stable and it'll give you the same thing every time.
yeah, it has a built-in idea of the frontier. Now it's like
That's funny. That's really funny because it's like it's implied. It's not
mhm.
direct. It's just like, wow, that's cool. Okay.
So you're going to have to figure out how to wrestle that out, right? And obviously that means when you're at the frontier, which I think is where you're most interested in being, if you're going to create the most utility, um, that means you're always going to be trying to push into the place where the LLM is actually the least useful. Um, but that's
That's a
also
really
the
good
place that
point. Like you could flag the area you're in as uncharted by the instability of the LLMs that you're bringing with you. That's a really good feature to add.
yeah. And not only that, I mean, that gives you a really strong idea of like what should be the next training material, right? Because like what you're hopefully doing is like steering out to the frontier as quickly as possible, finding your like group of people that are also at that same frontier,
Yeah.
and then like just organically participating with each other to like understand or build or push the frontier a bit farther. Once you feel like the line has moved, like everything behind it is now good training material for the next iteration of the LLM, right? Like you plant
Right.
the flag, you
Oh,
uncover
right.
the fog of war.
Right. You can consider it correct, and you'd like it to be inducted into the base model.
Yeah, exactly.
So the purpose of the social network is to expand the frontiers of the LLMs to terraform or firmify the knowledge areas that the humans have discovered because humans have a natural tendency towards the edge. And then you use that to build these global LLMs that are just always getting better.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little circular when you zoom out that far, right? It's like, what's the point of all of this? But you know what the election in the U.S. showed me is, I think humans have an inbuilt tendency to say, if I am not happy where I'm at, like let's just like push somewhere into completely unknown territory, right?
Yeah.
Like let's just blow some shit up.
No, there's a name for that fallacy. It's the like we can't handle inaction, even if inaction is the best move.
Right.
We can't do that.
I've never heard that. If you find the name of it, I'd be interested
Yeah,
in
I'll look it
looking
up
at
for
that
you.
because it's
But yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. Like
right,
you have to do something.
right. So I'm thinking like right now we have already on social media all these edge lords that are trying to push each other into like they're trying to goad each other into like destroying things, breaking things, right? And that's because they just don't feel like where they're at is good. And like if you can bottle that somehow, if you can introduce people together who can do that,
Hmm.
but in a constructive way rather than a destructive way, then they'll naturally want to jump out to the frontier, right? And like
So how would you measure that? Like it's sounding like at the very least the social network you're talking about needs oversight, like an automated oversight that it doesn't tell you what to do, but it just scores the impact of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a good. I don't know if I'd want to ever say oversight, because like I think preserving the organic feeling of like relationships between, and I think agents, like intelligent agents, you treat them like people too, but you don't want your agent driving you, right? Like you want it to feel all conversational. You want it to feel
I want it to drive me sometimes. Like, I'm too fat and I'm unfit and I need to stop, wasting time. Uh, Tune me to do that. Like, subtly influence what I look at on my social feed to steer me towards things I want. I don't care if you manipulate me. Just, I don't want to die of diabetes. Fix it.
yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think, under the way I think about it, like the job of that agent would be to hint to you that this is a community that's trying to solve the same problem that you're trying to solve, and bring you into that, like,
Right.
not just like, oh, cut calories, everybody knows to cut calories, right? But like somewhere out on the frontier of like health and youth science and that kind of stuff, like there's people that are having a conversation about like how does your brain form habits and prevent you from like
Right.
being
In this network, though, would you let people talk directly to each other, or would it always be proxied through LLMs that have already sort of smartened you up, deduplicated you? Like, are you talking to the LLM all the time, and really all that's happened when you join another community is the RAG DB moved? Like, you just,
yeah.
is that all that's happening?
I wouldn't want to say one way or the other, right? I think that like I think human to human contact is actually like a missing virtue in a lot of technology that we build these days, right?
Yeah, but maybe that was the fault.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of value out of like having an agent that can just show you what other I'm that kind of person. Some days I feel introverted. I don't want to go out there and like form a club in order to like solve a simple problem that I have, I just want you to show me the information. But like other times I can imagine if I enjoy that experience enough that like I would want to know who are the other people who are having it, and I would want to have more direct organic conversations with them.
Right, because we're really saying that the thing everyone desires is connection, belonging with other people, right?
That's Yeah, and also like I think everybody craves meaning. I think everybody craves
Me.
like that I was the person that solved this problem that I had. I did it. I found this
How can
meaning.
we sample that? How can you think of, because that sounds like something maybe you and I value, but how do we know that that's, I mean, do we care about the people that don't feel like that? Or is it just that,
No, it's a good question. I don't know if other people feel that way. I think um man, this is like university ethics textbook stuff, right? It's like, is there a greater good? Do people care about it? I
one,
um
I guess, how do we make a first version? How do we make a version of this thing that we
yeah,
can start to see signals of win or lose, right? Because none of the AI companies that I'm looking at, no one's doing social. They're not trying to be social, right?
right.
It's all like
Yeah,
me and the bot, and they want me to talk to the bot directly. The bot's
right.
not helping me find friends.
It's and they're all trying to be intermediaries, right? Like they're all trying to plant themselves between you and something so that they can charge
Gatekeep.
rents for it, right?
They can
Right.
charge me for
Yeah.
access to my new best friend. That's what they
Yeah.
want.
Right. Now, I mean, if you think of a good idea as its own type of currency, right? Like we were talking about the tokens of countries, like
Yep.
currencies, right? And the tokens of any kind of crypto thing.
Yep.
Um, you know, to avoid getting caught up in the token is the value, this thing is its own end, right? Like
Hmm.
you need to have some other thing that ends up being the currency, thing that you're transacting, and I think attribution, as you presented it to me, always felt like the idea is a type of currency, right? You've basically built a structure that's like a durable indication that this idea happened at this moment in time.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's the cohesion of the social network. Like if there's this global arbitrator that says that anytime anything of value is done by this network, some of that value is dispersed amongst its members.
Right.
Then you don't need to set a goal. It's just people decide that they want the most value.
Which is always going to be something you mine at the frontier, right? Like that's why people are like destructive impulse, fuck it up, let's restart. Is like, there are nuggets that we haven't dug out of the frontier yet that tell us how we can govern ourselves, that tell us how we can,
Yeah.
How we can run a society that's more fair than the one we have right now.
Right. I don't think like AI governance is the future, but it's never going to be put there by force. It needs to be put there from individuals accepting that it's the best way, being satisfied that they've tried doing it not the right way. Like if that time when you tried to drive faster than Google Maps, and then you're like, oh, okay. Eventually, you're like, this thing's better than me at directions. I'll just do what it says.
Yeah. And again, I think that where you get that feeling as an individual is from knowing that you've done the work and you've uncovered the thing, you've found the value of it. Other people have seen the value of it. That attribution proves the value of it, and like there, you can believe it a little bit more.
Okay, so I think the only components you need there are a contribution recording system, a broadcast system, and on top of that, an attribution system, which doesn't sound like it's actually the core of it's just the icing as opposed to the body of the cake, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think self-evidently good ideas are things that people will enjoy, even if you haven't figured out how to establish a monetary value to them yet. But the monetary value will definitely drive a lot more people into the ecosystem, right? Like if you think that like by being the person that uncovers this idea that other people then find and believe in, I get some actual monetary value for it. Then
so how would version 1 of this platform be presented to people who have never heard of it before? Would it be something on the web?
I think this is a really tough question. What I think it is in its kind of earliest form is something that is a replacement for the now dead industry of journalism, right? It's something that's like a place where I can present content.
Right.
I can work together with other people to verify that content, to like understand it, to break it apart, to drill down on the context of it, to relate it to all these other things. And in so doing, know that like I am enriching the knowledge of people around me, basically. It's like when I say social network, I don't mean Facebook, I don't mean Twitter, I don't mean TikTok. I mean something that like the more you engage with the information on it, the clearer the context of that information becomes. The more that piece of information relates to everything around it. The deeper the more solid the knowledge graph gets, I guess. Like the harder the links between the nodes are.
Yeah. More connections and more thicker connections as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So
web is for sure. I mean, I personally believe web is still the ideal delivery system for anything that's going to be a new platform for like knowledge and understanding, right? What I think is like Wikipedia is probably like there's a word I'm losing in my head right now, but like Wikipedia is like the idea of Web 1 made manifest, right? It's like it's the nicest idea that ever came out of that iteration of the internet.
Yes. Yeah, that's the gold. Yeah, that's like the Nobel Peace Prize of Web 1.
Right. Now, like, what if you could have something that felt like Wikipedia, but was as engaging as TikTok, where people just go on to clown around, they just go on to get entertained, but they always feel smarter because they used it. They always feel like they could get one step closer to solving the problem that they've personally identified because they know they have it.
Now we're talking. Okay.
You know, like it's something where you can just hit it once and you could just swipe through a bunch of shit and the algorithm slowly figures you out.
Yeah.
And then it starts, and then like you contribute to it and it starts understanding like, what are your pain points in your life? What are the things that you worry about? What are the things you care about? You know, where are the people dealing with that? And if you have intelligence baked into it, it can kind of probably understand like areas of active interest of like model development, of advancement of like all the things that we talk about, right? Like, you know, how should governance work properly, or like how do I want to build the next generation of interesting tools?
The system is aware of the frontier.
Yeah.
It's aware of your nuance.
Yeah.
Translates between frontier and your nuance to extract the most growth of the frontier out of you and attribute it back to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Bang on. I think that's 100% it. Is like, I don't necessarily want to come onto this thing to become an expert in something, but I want to just be entertained. But the longer I'm here, the more I realize I can contribute because of what I know and who I am and what I'm interested in.
So the thing would be trying to entertain you first, and instead of being paid by showing you an ad, it gets paid by frontier expansion.
I think so. That's where the main. I think that's the place where the most attribution style references would exist. Right, is the place that hasn't been uncovered yet. The place that like new things are being discovered.
Right, but they need not be groundbreaking things in physics. They can be as simple as spotting an opportunity for an efficiency gain locally. Like if you're like, oh, this guy down the road needs to move house, and my other guy's got this truck that's free on the weekends. Like even that's a contribution to, if you consider the world has a perfect efficiency state, and we're definitely not in it, then any motion towards that is an expansion of the frontier, maybe?
Can you figure out a way where that situation that you just mentioned can be considered frontier? Like, I think that's the question basically, is like, can simple things that need to be solved right now locally also be frontier in a certain aspect? In that way, I think like that's not the type of frontier I was talking about with the LLM before, where there's not a lot of conversation about it. This is a place where there is probably a lot of conversation about the domain, but there's just some specific need that hasn't been filled yet. How to model that as a frontier is not something I can wrap my head around just here in this conversation, you know?
Okay.
So maybe there's some non-frontier bits that like are important to the attribution system too.
Okay.
Or maybe I have an incomplete idea of what the frontier is.
Okay, so that sounds quite advanced. That ability to turn the system to be engaging for, without any disrespect, for lower and lower people or lower and lower intellect or engagement grades.
Yeah.
Making it increasingly entertaining for them. Okay.
I don't know. I guess it goes to the intent of the users, right? I think you could probably find a lot of high intent users that like,
they would be like the first cohort, right? Like that'd be like the core of the network, and they would seek about solving the foundational problems of the network, as well as how do we push out the next ring? Like how do we make our klutzy little bulletin board where we talk about cipher code one level out? How does that expand?
Right. Where we start getting into human to human governance, or like how to build apps on this thing, or how to tie into existing infrastructure instead of just like.
The network has rings. It definitely has rings, right? There's a core, just like how Facebook started in a particular university and then it grew with rings.
Yeah. Yep. And then eventually you'll hit a point where like the next cohort of users you need, if you really want this to have maximum utility, is like people that aren't necessarily interested in doing that, right? They're more interested in the typical things that people get from, like it turns more into an entertainment product at a certain
Right,
point.
right. But then at that point, what is the company of Facebook? Is in this model, it's just a group of those inner rings
Mm-hmm.
where the people that think about it daily are that they're still in the network. They're not like distinguished by being Facebook employees or not. They're just it's all just the network, and you're figuring out how to expand that network from within, as opposed to right. Okay,
Yeah.
I
And
think you're out of time there, buddy. I just don't want you to
oh
have a
yeah,
problem.
okay.
You can keep going. You can keep going. I'm here. I'm just. You mentioned that.
No, I have 10 more minutes or so if you want.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, so my personal hypothesis is that actually like a lot of what you would consider to be like engagement farming, low tier entertainment on social media right now,
Right.
probably if you built the right app, it probably wouldn't be as engaging as content that's more personally enriching. You know, it's the problem is that we can't figure out what's actually personally enriching for people. You know, if there was something that felt like as kinetic and like, you know,
Yeah.
swipe to just get the next thing as a TikTok, but like
Right.
actually made you better while you were using it, then probably
Well,
that would be the thing that I would want to use.
maybe that's only applicable to a small group of people because getting better is hard. Getting better is not running away from your problems, denying them, and just laughing at irrelevant stuff. Like getting better is not eating a pack of cookies. It's hard.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not for everyone, and perhaps it's a folly to try and chase that first. But maybe we need to say that we believe there's a group of individuals out there that are desperate for a high grade, high octane frontier social network, and they want to participate and build it. And those are the people that we make the first version for.
I think you could do worse than that for sure. Why I think that group of people that you're talking about is probably not small is just from decades of, you know, being on social media, being on something like, you know what, these people that come to these systems, like all of them want to talk about things that they think are important, at least some of the time, right? It's just that the environments that they've been forced into to do it are like highly destructive to that, right? Like they're
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. And they've also, until now, they've lacked the ability to build up their idea. The only way they knew how to build it up was to say it to someone else and get it reflected back. But now we have machines that can sort of build the idea up. And something that we've been experimenting with is this idea of a group chat with a bot, where you have like several people talking to one bot, and it's trying to piece together your ideas.
That sounds super dope. I like that idea a lot.
You know, and
Right?
it asks clarifying questions, and you can even have like silent private conversations with it because you don't want to sound stupid. It's got all the context and it privately gives you the answer, and then you're like, okay, publish, and then it's like, hey guys, we've been thinking about blah 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 blah, and
Right.
so it's that kind of a system.
If you could, you know, I'm viewing this as a Slack or whatever, but if one of the tabs on the Slack was like the knowledge graph that it was building so far, that you could just go and explore. Because you know what, I'm actually as much of a lurker as I am a chatter. Like I lurked actually 10 times as much as I chat, right?
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. Like the ability to build like a micro Wikipedia that's just frontier knowledge in your little bubble.
Yeah, like bubble Wikipedia. Yeah.
That I could just go and drill into and understand all these things that I didn't like. I would love that
but also
right?
talk to, like navigate it by chat, like, oh, what did so and so say, or why is this like that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I think like that sounds like an absolute dream to use because it's find the community, like engage with the community, like and engage with the community's output. From an entertainment perspective, what I read a lot is that um, more and more entertainment franchises are trying to become fandoms, which is like something that you build really expensive like movies and TV shows and like social media content and whatever
right,
from the owners of the IP. But then more and more it's about like creating the experience that the community itself owns the entertainment, and like fan fiction is like allowed, or like
mm.
personal contributions to the fandom are things that
Oh,
the
right, and
creators
so
care about.
right, and so if we can imagine these AI video generators getting like incredibly better over the next few years, and so
Yeah.
like producing a blockbuster film. But it's not even that, right? Like this media is going to change to be adaptive. So like
Mhm.
while I'm watching the film, something detects my facial reactions and then rewrites the script, partway through the movie.
Yeah. People love to focus on the movie serves you as an individual, adaptive AI driven entertainment. But
Right.
my personal belief is that the thing we lost with the internet is like that period in time where everybody saw the same movie and like it was fun because you got to chat with people about what you thought about it, right? Like I think more of these experiences. This is another reason why I think social is like an important thing to pursue, right? Is that um, if you had that ability to create adaptive art from a fandom, like then it becomes another thing that you share with the community that you can talk about with the community. That's like a really exciting thing for people, right? It's
Right.
like it's not just about it reacting to your specific tastes and needs. It's I think the
That's
final
the thing.
form of
That's really just increasing loneliness and disconnection because
yeah,
now
exactly.
you're truly alone because everything you see is only for you. And who
Right,
are you to share it with?
right. And like imagine you know having the ability to make the next Marvel movie with like the 100 people in the world that really care about this Marvel character as much as you do. Like
Right.
that to me is way more engaging than like waiting for Marvel Studios to do it or getting some AI to just serve it to me individually. What am I going to do with that? I'm going to be like, I saw this really cool movie that you
Yeah,
can't
I
see.
think that I think the difference that we want out of the next social network is it's going to help us get together and do stuff. Not
Yeah,
like organize a meetup or a hike, but it's like going to help us build a homemade battery car that's going to outperform, XYZ and have a very
right,
low cost, right? It's like doing stuff.
right. Bingo, bingo, 100%. I want to have a zero footprint house. And like
Right.
maybe
Right.
here
Right.
there's like
Right.
there's a way to do that with the people around me that already know a bunch of this stuff.
Probably within your city, there's enough people that if there was a wartime cry that said, we're only going to live if you can build a zero footprint house, probably even within your city, you could pull that off. But the disconnection dulls all the output.
Yeah. And like imagine something goading me into just doing that with the people that know how to do it. And then I'm gonna help them do it when they want to do it. Right. And like it's a virtuous cycle thing, right? And you also you
Because
get to accumulate the knowledge as like a something that you get to keep and reuse forever.
and it also seems like an element of debt maintenance where the social network can track debts. Like this guy did this thing for you, so you owe him a debt
Mhm.
according to the social network records.
Right. Imagine trying to write the code for that by hand without an AI. Because like it has to be private too, right? You don't want to share all the debts that you have with everyone else.
Oh dear.
No, I mean just think about the type of like mental tallies you can keep track of now when you have not only to not write the code yourself, but you have something that's smart that's keeping track of it for you.
Mm.
Uh, I do think there'll be types of social engagement that are like not possible on an old style system and only possible with agents that are helping.
Yeah, and so those are the ones that we want to enumerate and experiment with because it's
Mhm.
like that's a new opportunity. No one's in
Yeah,
there, and the old ones can't seem to move to be that. There's novel kinds of communication about to roll out, and we need to be doing them.
Mm-hmm. We needed to be doing them 50 years ago.
True.
Right? We like our ability to like take advantage of all these things, like of all these resources without thinking about them. Sorry, our ability to take advantage of resources grew faster than our ability to think about the consequences of doing so.
Right. Right.
And
So
like,
consequence, if the social network had consequence, like a conscience of consequence, that every time you did something, it's like, I've mapped out the impact of you doing this for the rest of your natural life, and it's
yeah,
this. Do you want to
it
keep going?
seemed, which I mean, I think the positive reinterpretation of that is just attribution. Actually, I think that like, consequence is a way you could keep track of it if you were interested in punishment, or
Oh,
like,
right. Yeah, right. But being able to show you how you could change and have positive
yeah,
impact.
yeah, yeah. Like attribution works as like the yin to the yang there, right? It's like I did this, and like no one can take away that I did this. This is a value that I added here, and like
Yeah,
somehow I hope to get paid back for it, right?
man, this is not a yeah. Okay, this is not an easy
I,
thing.
yeah, right. It's like I'm sorry, I always shoot off in like 10 extremely difficult
That's
directions,
what I
but
was asking for. That's what I was.
well, I'm anxious to see what O1 makes of it.
Mm, mm. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll process this and then mull over it for a week or two, and then hit you up for session two if you're down, and then
Anytime.
just keep building on it. Because yeah, the future changed for me, man. Like in the last week, we can make code for cents on the dollar now, and it's good, and that's a problem for how our models went because
Right.
and now we have this new task, which is actually thinking about what we want, um, which is actually quite hard. So that sounds like it can be a social activity for sure. Who knows how to capture all that? So yeah,
Well, I mean, I actually think the format that you're proposing right now is kind of like an interesting experiment in that, right? Is like this is going to come with like measurable outputs, right? Like outputs you can implement and measure after you analyze it, right?
I hope so.
Will it? Well, maybe it won't. I'm really good at talking in circles, so maybe it won't.
Oh, it'd definitely be a lesson. It's just I just wish that I could see further into the future right now.
I think if you follow all the financial charts and all the conversation about everything, I think everybody is feeling that at this moment in time.
Mm.
I've never seen a moment where like the collective feeling everywhere that I look is like, what the fuck is going to happen next? Maybe
But,
that's what.
but that's fun, right? Like
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like if the world's changing so quickly, which is what we're starting to see with AI, that is an interesting thing to have a social media feed about. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
what the hell changed today? So many things everywhere, so many things.
So that sounds like a way that you could start to feed people back into whatever you build too, right? Like if it's meant to be a social experience that has agents that are helping you, like then like attaching yourself to the social media networks that exist now as like a summary feed is like a good way to draw people back. Anyway, I should probably
Okay.
jump.
All right, buddy.
Yeah, have a
Thank
good
you
one.
very much. That was very helpful. I will.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how the processing goes.
Yeah, cool. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay. See you.